What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today we're going to be doing the camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE versus the Pixel 6. So the Pixel 6 comes in at $100 less at $599, and the FE comes in at $699. So a lot of people think that's overpriced, but how do the cameras compare? Let's go ahead and take a look at these. Let me know which audio sounds best, and let me know what video looks best. And we're going to test these out in every condition, and we're going to see which one comes out on top. Let's do it. So let's start with the daytime pictures. Most smartphones these days do a great job during the day, so these images are going to look extremely similar, but there are a few differences, so let's go over them. I decided to turn off the scene optimizer on the S21 FE because during the day I felt like it was oversaturating the images in certain scenarios. Here's a side-by-side example. It doesn't do this all the time, but you can see how the sky and the greenery are affected by this processing. So for the remainder of this video, all the images that you are seeing are ones with the scene optimizer off. For the most part, the colors and overall image look extremely similar. The Pixel does tend to give you a flatter color profile most of the time, so those of you that like to edit your images might like them better. The S21 FE, even with the scene optimizer off, likes to brighten the shadows, so a lot of people might like this better, but I do like the way that the highlights are handled on the Pixel 6. You can see that back here on the building when you punch in. You can still see the detail that's preserved on the Pixel 6. From a photography perspective, I think that's my biggest gripe with Samsung processing, is that it pushes the highlights up a little too far, creating the brighter overall image, but with the sacrifice of highlight clipping. So I think this will be a personal preference thing for sure. This flower shot is a great example, even though that the S21 FE is more ready to share out of the camera for social media, let's say, the highlight control and overall balance is better on the Pixel 6. After looking at a lot of images side by side from that day, you can see that this is very consistent, and yes, there are times where it's the opposite, like this, where the shadows are brighter in the trees on the Pixel 6, and in this dramatic sunset shot, they both battle each other, where the sky is brighter and more pronounced on the S21 FE, but the trees are crushed, where the Pixel gives you plenty of shadow detail on the trees and controls the highlights on the sky. But basically 90% of the time, the S21 FE gives you the brighter overall image with slightly higher contrast and more saturation. The sky color here on the city shot is captured more accurately by the Pixel. There are some differences in white balance as well, especially when it comes to the sunset. Here, the S21 FE calculated the overall scene better, where the Pixel went a little too warm, but I think you'll be happy with either one during the day. Food shots are very important to me because I love food, but this is also super preference based because I think this is where maybe a more accurate shot is not what people want straight out of the camera. For instance, here I think the slightly bumped up exposure is nicer on this bowl of ramen on the S21 FE. Also on the sandwich, the brighter shot and vibrancy makes the bread more desirable. Same thing with this cup of coffee. The sharper image and the overall brightened capture definitely makes it more shareable out of the camera. But again, when it comes to accuracy, the Pixel is more true to what I was seeing. The minimum focusing distance on both of these aren't spectacular in any way, but I think on food, I do prefer the S21 FE. But when it comes to consistency and overall image processing here, I prefer the Pixel 6 on everyday photography. I also dig this motion action pan mode. When it hits, it looks so good. It's not perfect by any means, but it's cool that you can just do this with software, so you definitely need to give this a try. But to sum it up, I prefer the overall control and balance of the Pixel 6 shots better, even though they sometimes are a tad too contrast heavy, like in this sandwich shot. Now, where the S21 FE does have an advantage is in the zoom range. The S21 FE has a 3x optical telephoto, which I think is much nicer than the 2x digital crop that you get on the Pixel 6, is just more useful. Here is a main sensor shot, which both look very similar. Now here is the zoom shot of the building, and just look at how much closer you can get with the S21 FE. Here is another example of a 3x versus 2x shot between the two. But what's cool is that you can go up to 7x hybrid zoom on the Pixel 6, which doesn't look terrible, but here is the 10x hybrid on the S21 FE. It doesn't look great, but it will do the job if you need it. You can go all the way up to 30x space zoom, and honestly, this is much better than I thought it would look, but I would only use this in a pinch if you absolutely need it. Having 3x zoom on the Galaxy S21 FE also gives you a nice focal length for portrait pictures as well. Of course, both of them can shoot wide portrait shots, but the 3x really gives you that nice close-up framing. When it comes to accuracy of portrait mode, it does go back and forth, but I'm shocked that the Pixel 6 actually missed this area. The S21 FE got it no problem. The thing that I don't like sometimes about the Pixel is the background blur set by default is just too much. I know you can adjust it later, but I would like to see more of a roll off, so I do like the S21 FE better here, even though that the image is softer. When using 2x portrait on the Pixel 6, it's a crop of the main sensor, so it does give a nicer background blur here, but the photo looks over sharpened and digitalized. But the 3x optical portrait mode is showing its age in the sensor with a noisy and soft image. Here is a main sensor portrait shot while the sun was setting, and you can see that the Pixel does a great job of keeping my daughter nice and sharp in the foreground. They both didn't do great with the netting and the water, but that's expected. On non-portrait mode shots, I prefer the skin tones that come off of the Pixel. It's not over brightened and it's controlled better. When it comes to ultra-wide photos, the S21 FE has a much wider field of view, so you're going to get a lot more in the frame than the Pixel 6. That's probably one of the biggest downsides of the Pixel lineup, is that the ultra-wide should be much wider, but keep that in mind if you love ultra-wide photos. They both can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second and both shoot great looking daytime video. The Pixel is more saturated when it comes to color reproduction, so I prefer the more natural tone of the S21 FE, so keep that in mind. You can really see that when you look in the sky, but both are very smooth here at 4K 30 frames per second. If you want to see ultra wide video, here you go. Like I was saying, the Pixel is very colorful, and sometimes that extra contrast really does help the Pixel in bright daylight conditions. When zooming in, the turtle shell and the overall scene looks more balanced and all around in this scenario. So let me know what you think here. Both do a great job with stabilization while walking, and both of them have extra stabilization modes if you drop below 4K. When first looking at the Pixel 6 video, it actually looks smoother overall with less movement, but if you look closely, the S21 FE does have sharper video while walking, but it does have more correctional periods when panning. But if you punch into the video, there is more wobble and instability, especially during the bounces, so I think the S21 FE might take this one. Okay, so last one before moving on to low light is selfie cameras. The S21 FE does have a 32 megapixel front-facing camera, but for the most part, the Pixel 6's 8 megapixel shooter just does a better job overall with contrast and skin tone. A lot of times they do go in total opposite directions when it comes to white balance. In this portrait shot, they both went opposite and neither of them nailed it, but the Pixel preserves the skin tone way better and it's much sharper as well. So if you like taking a ton of selfies, then I would go with the Pixel 6 instead of the S21 FE. Okay, so let's jump into the low light photos. When it comes to moderate low light, they both look very similar, but that 50 megapixel sensor binning down helps the Pixel capture more detail and lose more noise. You can see that clearly when you punch in. The tree is more detailed, and in the ceiling you can see how much better the noise is. What I didn't like about the Pixel is sometimes that dynamic range and processing should be better. Look at this lamp, it's totally blown out on the Pixel where it's handled much better on the S21 FE. When you punch in, you can see it even better, but if you look, the noise level across the image is better on the Pixel. They both have noise on the pillar, but if you look, you can definitely see a difference. But obviously, if you aren't a Pixel peeper like I am, then these indoor shots will look very similar. The reason why I show you differences like this so you know what's going on, if it doesn't matter to you, then it's totally fine. Where I think the Pixel really shines is in the single snapshots without night mode. In this beach shot, just look at how colorful the image is and the contrast is dramatic. I can see some of you liking the S21 FE night shot more though because it's more natural and it can be edited. So again, this is preference based. When you kick in night mode, it almost swaps where the FE now is more saturated in the sky, but they both do a great job of brightening up the scene and adding more detail, regardless of going totally different on white balance. Another example of the Pixel being very dramatic with color and being ready to share right out of the camera, besides this right here, just like the indoor shot, that could be better controlled. Then kick in night mode, and this one I prefer the S21 FE. Even though it is a little cold on the white balance, I feel that the Pixel 6 is going in the right direction of warmth, but I don't like the cloud color, so this is definitely preference as well. So this is a big theme here at night. The white balance just keeps flipping back and forth. Even the S21 FE here just creating a terrible looking shot with all of the green pickup, so it can go back and forth. But for the most part, the Pixel 6 does create the sharper image overall when it comes to general nighttime photography, with some hits that it takes to dynamic range. Here it is again on these lights on the building. But when you punch in, look at how much cleaner the overall processing is. The text is smoother and less over sharpened, and the noise level is controlled better. Just like the daytime, it will be a preference between the brighter overall picture or better balance all around minus harsh lighting. Here it is again on this uplighting. The Pixel just doesn't handle it as well, but the sign is better on the Pixel. So the processing still needs work, and so does Samsung. So I'm sure that both of them will get better with time and updates. But generally, I find the Pixel 6 just to be more consistent with overall nighttime photography. You know what to expect every time that you take the shot. With the FE, sometimes you get weird things that happen like this. Look at the bag, and then you get times where it takes the better shot like this. So I think consistency isn't as solid as I would like it to be. So I hope that changes with future software updates. Even with the wide angle, I'm getting the same results. Even though that the Pixel 6 isn't as wide, the single snapshot really does look a lot better. And even with night mode kicked in, the FE is picking up that green tint again, so it just doesn't look as good. Trust me, the Pixel 6 is far from perfect at night. It does make some mistakes, like on this 2x shot. It's really noisy in the sky. Even though the S21 FE sometimes takes the better shot, I think the Pixel 6 makes it pretty easy to call a winner on this one. The single snapshot is more natural on the Pixel 6 here, and when night mode kicks in, you can really see the difference here. So if you want the best nighttime shots and more consistency, then I think you should lean towards the Pixel. When it works, I really like the long exposure mode as well at night. It gives a nice motion to the water, which makes the water more interesting, so go ahead and give this a try. I don't think I need to bombard you with a lot of samples because this is a great example. The Pixel 6 keeps the boat and the building behind it clearly visible, where the FE struggles with the moving boat and the building lights are just blown. This also carries over to the 4K video at night. While it's no secret that Samsung phones struggle at low light video, this shows the major improvement in Pixel video in this generation. Both videos have noise, but the Samsung is worse. Both seem to be doing well with stabilization. This video is shot handheld, but the Pixel is showing the lens reflection pretty clearly here off of that sign, so be aware of that. Can you see it? But this had me curious, so I did another test, but I think it depends on the lighting situation. The S21 FE also has this pretty clearly, so I guess it all just depends on the scenario that you're filming at night. I know a lot of you wanted to see stabilization with the wide angle with 4K video, and the S21 FE is looking better here with the video, which makes no sense. So this is what I mean by consistency. Both nice and stable, but I think the S21 FE here is a little smoother while I'm walking. What do you think? Let me know which one looks better in the comments below. So in conclusion, if you are just focused on the camera and want the most consistent experience, then I would choose the Pixel 6 here, and that's great since this phone costs $100 less on retail. The S21 FE is arguably the more feature-rich camera with Pro Mode on photos and video, and it does have the wider ultra-wide and a 3x optical zoom camera, so you have to weigh in if the S21 FE is a better choice overall when it comes to the entire phone. But when it comes to the camera performance alone, and from what I've seen, I think I'm going to edge this one to the Pixel 6. So what do you think? Do you agree or disagree after the evidence that you've seen in this video? Let me know why in the comments below, and be nice to each other. They are just phones after all. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and if it helped you make a buying decision. Both phones will be linked down below so you can check current pricing. Subscribe for a lot more camera comparisons just like this one. The S21 FE versus iPhone 13 is next, and I will see you in the next one.